Thank you all for joining. So the purpose of this webinar today, we're going to go through what we call the happy path. And we're going to do what would be a typical most dominant happy path for the care sector, but we can focus it any way you like, really. We could come up with a typical organisation or what their main products are and go relatively specific, or keep it general. But we'll definitely do one for the care sector or disability sector. So I guess starting point, what is the happy path? Does anybody know what the happy path is at all?
Nope.
No, cool. All right. So really, it quite possibly is one of the most important documents that you're going to create. The objective is to capture any organization's operations in a concise, easy to read format. It will be the most dominant process in the organization. We do it really simply, so it's just an outline in bullet list, just done in a Word doc or standard document, and every sentence is going to begin with user does, or user creates, or system does, system creates. You can interchange user for role if it's more generic than an individual user. So an example would be user receives a call from the client's representative, or user creates a price estimate. System will validate the service booking. So absolutely okay to replace user with the name role. And the idea is it will encapsulate kind of 80% of any organization's operations into that one dominant process, that one document. If you're a really large organization or just particularly diverse, then you might have more than one happy path, but you should really aim for one. The starting point should always be to aim for one. It'll be no longer than 2 pages, and that's really important, because if it grows beyond 2 pages, the document will become really hard to use. And the thing you want to avoid most is any reluctance to go and update the document, with the reluctance to learn from the document. So it's always best to err on the side of keeping it simpler and on omitting elements which could be inferred. The person creating the first draft of any happy path is not going to know everything, and it's absolutely fine just to have a go at it and let it refine over time. The main thing is to get a draft copy, so you've got a starting point by which then all our users can amend and build on that. So if you're doing a big systems change or execution, then the idea is this can be used to achieve one of your really first big milestones, which is executing the happy path in a test system. And that's what we'd do as part of a big systems rollout. So each time somebody does make a change or recommends a change, it's great to save a new version, because it's a really good document to see how it changes over time. Particularly if something switches from user does to system does, or if you're just able to track or recognize an element in the process that you didn't have previously, or able to eliminate it for that matter as well. So the document can also be used to merge any of your organizational terms with the system terms, particularly if you use any systems that don't allow you to change your terminology at all. That can act as a really good bridging document. So what we're aim to do is we will come up with a happy path, and the idea is we're welcome to all your input as well in the creation of that. And what we'll do is circulate that document at the end as well. So Jess, if you wouldn't mind sharing some dot points, just as the example dot points that we created. Brilliant. So there we've just got some example bullet points. This is in no particular order. Just examples to give you an idea of what we'd be looking to achieve. Is there any questions on that at all? Brilliant. Cool. So right, first thing then, we've got to pick any specifics. Obviously, we'll go with a disability services organisation. Any specific products anyone will want us to look at as a dominant product that this organisation does?
Respite.
Respite. Put that option up there. I was thinking supported independent living.
Yeah.
Sales a good one. Sales a nice one.
Respite / STA. We could do in-home support. We could just presumably you're going to want to cover to some extent other products anyway, but typically, you know, an organization has one more dominant service that they provide than others. What do you reckon, Jess? In-home support, respite, seal?
I think seal.
Seal.
Yeah.
Let's do seal. So we'll make the assumption that this organization, 80% of the products or services that they provide is seal.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Anyone want to kick us off with a starting dot point?
I guess we could do.
What's the initiation of any activity in the organisation? Where does it all start?
Email received from a support coordinator or a potential client.
So yeah, we're going to receive some sort of contact, be it from a support receivers client representative or a support coordinator. So somebody's going to receive. It could come in the system as well, but like we just keep it a broad representation of a contact. And cool. So typically, what's a user going to do with that information or contact for the next stage? What do you reckon, Jess?
So, yeah, so I guess in the first case, depending on where that organisation is and where that contact comes through, they might even just capture those details as a first point if it gets captured at reception or by somebody in the office that isn't able to process it. So I'd say user records details and the services that are being sought.
Yeah. And I go as far as here just to provide some context around what this organisation has. We could infer that they're going to record those details in an inquiry. That may also be called a lead in some systems as well. So this would be where you just capture really base level any of the information that which you receive in that call. Other points where you might receive that information, just for context, might be a email contact form as well. So it might not come from a phone call, but it might come from the contact form, and that might actually automatically generate that information in a system itself. And might even also create then a task for a user to follow up on that. But in this case, and that's where we say we've got one dominant scenario, but you don't need to cover off on every single edge case because you're going to test those anyway as part of it. It's just to show what the flow could typically be. So we got here user records, contact details and service request details on an inquiry / lead. Brilliant. And then what do you reckon? So next action or next item that's going to occur.
The system notifies or alerts the
assessment team. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that could happen in many ways. So in some systems, just the presence of a lead, it might create a separate task in some way for that to occur. Another typical way is actually you might just have an assignment on that inquiry itself directly to what they call a sales representative or a service representative, who then it will appear in their workflows, effectively like a notification. and therefore they can follow up on the new inquiry. So cool. So here we've got a new user. Yeah.
Yeah. So user 2 would be someone in the assessment team. I've just added a number so we can distinguish it's now a new user.
Yes. Yeah.
So user 2 would review the details and follow up.
So we're assuming here there's no system-based validation. So validating is validating that lead. Can you go, or inquiry, sorry, can you actually, can this organization provide the services based on the details that are already within that inquiry? We're assuming that here the system does not do that at all, and that would be typical that it really wouldn't, I would say, at this stage. But here we've got user two effectively doing that role. So they are effectively validating it. They may actually even decide that they can't provide services or meet the requirements in this inquiry at that stage. But either way, they are going to follow up on that inquiry and update it. So they'll update the status, or if there's any sort of status fields within their inquiry tool, they're going to update that. And yet they'd be following up on that inquiry, normally contacting who the person is on to progress. The organization would be different. Some organizations might have a team or a position that just follows up on the very early stages of any client process, so on the inquiry stage, or they then have somebody further on who does a far more thorough assessment process, particularly as we're looking at supported independent living here, because that's a big product that we're looking at, big service. So there's likely to be a far more thorough assessment process than with the other products. And you're actually going to be able to allow for a bit more cost to occur in that assessment process, because you're looking at a far bigger package size generally as part of that as well. So yeah, the assessment might be different to the inquiry, but here we can keep that relatively simple in the user choose reviewing those details, and we'll follow up on that inquiry, definitely. So assuming they then gather details, this is kind of a decision point. So we're going to go in the most dominant scenario. So we don't tend to build up kind of a tree-based diagram on the happy path. If it ended here, we'd assume it ended there at the inquiry. But we're gonna take the standard, which is to follow it through. So here we'd be looking to progress from the inquiry stage for this potential client. So we'll look at the convert process. Yep. Yep. Cool. So, and also might we say just about the creating a more of a detailed opportunity at that stage as well.
Yes. Sorry. So user 2 converts inquiry to prospective client.
Yeah. So here we got the user doing it, and that's absolutely fine. And we also could have a process where a system perhaps does this bit too. So like if the user closes off the inquiry or progresses the inquiry, the system's going to therefore create 2 new documents in the system. Perhaps, say, for example, it might create the actual client now in the system. So like a record that reflects in more detail the client. Also, now they are a known entity in the system. And it might also automatically create that service opportunity record as well, which is a separate record to the inquiry. The inquiry is typically going to be more focused on who's making the inquiry, whoever's the contact is, whereas the opportunity is far more detailed about what the opportunity is. So in this case, on SIL, on the opportunity record, that's where it would be capturing far more information around like the types and what service is being requested. So are they in their own home? Are they looking for a shared home? Do they need the accommodation as well as the support? So are they just seeking supports? That's where we'd capture that detail in the service opportunity. And also, just go for it.
No, I was just going to say also within that service opportunity is where you'd start creating price estimates. So looking at the actual cost of service, what you can provide within the funded amount, or what you can provide, or what it would cost for what they need.
Yeah.
Also, the partner system that you hope does it nice and easily, because we know that can be a very time-consuming process.
Particularly with supported independent living.
Oh yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah. And I'll add it on these stages is your inquiries. Typically, you're not going to get too fussed about the data quality. While we're big proponents of data quality, inquiries are a bit of a dumping ground, because particularly if you're receiving, say, contact forms from a website that's feeding into there, it definitely is typically going to be, you're not going to require certain fields. You'll just get what you can, because it's something to follow up on. But when you're creating the actual client in your system or prospective client in the system, that's when you're looking at that point you're looking to collect quality data. You're kind of in some ways your inquiry is protecting the quality of your data on your actual clients or prospective clients by acting as a dumping ground. So yeah, cool, brilliant. So we've got our service opportunity, and so in this case again we keep following it through. So we'll assume that service opportunity will convert at this point. But is there any other stages that we'd want to reflect before we convert a service opportunity?
So often you'd want to do your assessments, your risk assessments. That's where you capture all of the additional details. Very rarely would you get all of the support requirements at the inquiry level. You generally need to do an assessment to really capture the full extent of details on the support required. So you'd want to have two.
And what you've got with that nice service opportunity record is something to reference if you're creating requests in the system or a tool, or you're asking basically somebody else perhaps to conduct assessments. You've got a good reference point there to connect those two, because with the opportunity record. And on SIL, there'll be quite a variety of assessments. One of them might be, for example, matching. Matching would be a big one in supported independent living if they're going into a group home or What I would also add at this stage, just as a separate document, would be a price estimate. You're highly likely to be producing a price estimate at this stage as the opportunity progresses. Now, SIL's an interesting one in that regard, because you might actually know what price you have to achieve to give you a set weekly amount. So that price estimate would be actually more focused around what you can do for that amount. So what roster of supports you could do for the weekly amount, as opposed to changes to that weekly amount. Although if you are coming under the weekly amount, then it might still be valid. We've done plenty of those roster tools, Jess.
Yes. Okay. So we'll assume from there that price estimate or quotation is approved, assessments all pass, and support can safely be provided. And then what we'll do is you two would create a service agreement. Or is there any other steps, Matt, you can, or anyone that can think of? I'm going to put schedule.
No.
Same time.
The only one I would consider adding, and we may have to remove this. If we get over 2 pages, we're going to cut back, and you'll make more assumptions. But there's typically going to be a validation process that will occur, and it almost always would be done by a user because of the number of variables, particularly on a supported independent living. But it's worth putting in because there is a potential to systemize that at some point as well. And that would be, as you were saying, just validating that, do we have all the assessments in place? Has everything been done that needs to be done before we'd agree to provide services to someone? And you might even have a risk assessment that you do as part of that validation that denotes a kind of checklist for that validation.
And each organisation, while similar within the industry, would have a unique set of variables that they need to qualify as part of the intake and assessment process.
Yeah, and also the fine art there as well is being able to do it as cost effectively to come under the obviously the pricing that's required, and but also doing it thorough enough that when you go to provide services, all the information is in place by which to do that. Brilliant. Yeah, so at that point we'd be creating the service agreement, and we'd be definitely scheduling the bookings. And we might even have a convert process of the price estimate to the bookings, depending on the product and the possibility therefore doing that. But it's worth noting it. Yeah, and because this is NDIS and it's supported independently, well, because it's broadly more because it's NDIS, you are going to typically want to estimate the entirety of the bookings. So I just put there for the duration of the agreement, because you want to know that you're going to come under the budget amounts in their plan, or their budget amounts in the service agreement being the amounts that they've committed to you as their provider to provide those services. And that's why typically you are going to create all of the bookings for the duration of the agreement, so you've got that comparison.
I'll tell you what, we're creating a nice single source of truth on this new customer, that's for sure, throughout this process.
We got half an hour for this, didn't we?
Yep, so we've got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes. I've been
Let's get this customer in.
I've been taking it far too casually. Yeah, okay. We'll fly to some endpoints so we capture some of the latter stages. Okay. All right. So we've got service bookings. With service bookings on the end of this portal as well. We need to get to. So if we've created service bookings, we probably, so that would be the chargeable items to the customer. We haven't created our costing records as such. So this would be shifts. There may be vehicles that need to be booked as part of the process and allocated to this booking as well. So we'll look, we'll start to consider costing records.
Sorry, so what were some of the examples you wanted for that one?
Well, the biggest one is going to be the rostered shifts. And every organization is different, depending on how far out they will roster shifts. But I would say 6 to 8 weeks out, typically a shift is going to be created or rostered. Now, what we would say, actually going back a step, is templates. I reckon at that booking stage, or you're likely to incorporate the new service into any rostered templates that are in place. That way, when we need to create those rostered shifts 6 to 8 weeks out, they can be created from a template. Now, we won't go down a path of that. I just want one thing to consider when you're thinking of a complete closed loop system. As soon as you create that price estimate or service booking, or even beforehand, if you really want to work off service opportunities as well, you get into demand planning. So there might be a loop here as well, back to your recruitment team or your forecasting team as a prompt to go out and hire new staff or consider new job ads on the basis of this new service. That is almost always being done in some way via a manual request within the organization. But it's something to put out there, because in the future, that is something, again, you could have a prompt within the system that says, right, we've got this new service opportunity. The likelihood of converting it is this, and therefore we can do a prompt to our recruitment to consider new job ads. Yep, so we've got our service cost records, our rostered shifts, and so on. And then then we get really into, is there anything else before providing service?
On the level of the happy path, I can't think of anything. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than that, obviously, but documentation.
I mean, throughout that process, you've now got somebody in the system that we're documenting all of our opportunities, our discussions, our meetings, our etc. So they can really provide that strong single source of truth for the client. That's really important. It's nice to know if Jess gets a phone call. If I go in there tomorrow, I can go and read through those notes and say, oh, Jess took a phone call tomorrow. So when I ring that potential call, oh, you spoke to Jess yesterday, thank you. And then sort of build on that discussion point. And that's a nice process for the client to go through. Absolutely. And easy for us too, as workers within the organisation. It's nice to know what's going on.
Yep. So any activity that happens can be referenced to the client, and therefore, seen and reported on, which is really good. So if we go, users provide the service. And users typically will complete service delivery records as well. So there's going to be some level of, there has to be some level of completion, knowing that their service is being provided. Now, when that happens, we've got some postings that we can do. So we're looking at a complete flow here. We can start to state that there will be a posting here, so system posting. And we will go with, we'll assume, okay, let's first, system creates invoices. So the service has been provided. We know what the information to be claimed was from the booking. So system will create invoices. And then we could have system posts to our financial general ledger. And it's going to post, in this instance, we've got it automated, it will be to cost of services and to revenue. Okay, so we'll fly through now. We're going to do it in less than a minute. So if this, once we've created invoices, then they've got to get paid.
User 1 and 2 get paid.
Yeah. So we'll go client pays invoice. Now in this example, bearing in mind that the person receiving the services, the client, is going to be different to typically to the person who will be paying it, which would be the funding body. So we can just put, yeah. I wouldn't say that typically the user's going to receive the payment, but the organisation, yeah.
I'm just trying to keep it consistent with the user at the beginning, but yeah, we'll go with.
Yeah. And when payment received, so we got another post in because so we had revenue cost of services. They were also, sorry, there would have been a account AR posting at that point in time as well, which we missed of the system posting. So that's accounts receivable because the client would have, or the funding body would have owed us money at that point in time. And now when it's paid, so that will clear out. So accounts receivable, cash. Once the payment's been made. And then that closes it off because that booking's closed. Payment's been made. And it's happy days when the organisation gets paid.
And the client receives quality services.
Absolutely. So there's all sorts of then side scenarios you could take with this. So you could go off one with, you know, an incident's being lodged or whatever it might be at various stages. So it's not a replacement for all of those other scenarios that need to be tested, but this is just your one dominant happy path right from beginning through to end. Brilliant. Any questions at all? We will circulate this. Looking forward to finding out how anyone's gone with the happy path. And yeah, we really appreciate your time and thank you very much for joining.
Just one comment, if I could.
I'll go for it.
And I'm sure it's probably more to do with internal processes for ourselves. This area, by the way, is quite new to me. We wouldn't be, you know, we wouldn't implement the service until we've got a signed service agreement back from either the client themselves or their particular family.
Definitely.
Or guardian, you know,
point.
so it is, you know, we can go through all that, but we can't really do it unless we've got a signed service agreement.
Yeah. So yeah,
and again, it's an internal thing though.
Well, but it's a good point. You could have that. You'd say that's validation, additional validation after the creation of the service agreement. Really good dot point to add there around receiving the signed service agreement.
And you would hope that your system would support those decisions to be communicated throughout the business. And it's like you can't create a booking or you can't create a rostered event and send that out to your staff until that agreement is signed. Yeah, having those checks and balances within your application reduces the risk, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Absolutely. One other detail you can add on here is actually if you're going across systems with these processes, you can note that on it too. That can be quite useful as well. And when you're testing this happy path, often you'll have to get like a lot more users because this will go across departments or teams. It's great to get them together in one room and watch it in real time as it moves in the system from one to another as well.
Because some of the good areas there that we haven't got in here would be the rostering. So that rostering process of actually assigning staff to those shifts. Yeah. You'd see that's, you know, those little extra bits are where this will really start to grow and you'll find you're going to want to go over 2 pages and you'll have to restrict it.
You'll cut it back for sure. Yeah. Brilliant.